Hallelujah. Glory be to God. God is faithful. Excuse me. I'm reading in Galatians chapter 6, where it says in verse 3, if anyone thinks of himself something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. You know, a lot of times people don't have any biblical fruit, but they think of themselves as something. Why? Well, pride is delusional. Pride makes you think of yourself more highly than you ought. Then in verse 4, but each one must examine his own work. That means there's work to be done, especially eternal fruit. And then he will have reason for boasting in regard to himself alone and not in regard to another. This is crucial. We have got to stop comparing ourselves among ourselves. We've got to stop being in competition with each other. This is not, Christianity is not a sport. It is, especially in this age, it is a recovery mission to seek and save the lost, to lay hands on the sick and see them recover, to bind the brokenhearted, to set people who are in bondage free, and to reflect the heart of the Father to a dying world. Yes, there is Christian fellowship. In fact, I'm very protective of church to not be worldly. It is a special fellowship for believers. Let the gathering of the people be unto the Lord. And yes, I'm also, because my primary ministry is reaching out to the lost. So God does establish houses of evangelism. And there is a higher worldly quote in those places. I don't really call those churches, though. It is a ministry team that is reaching out to the lost. A lot of times there's confusion and frustration because people go and they expect it to be church, and it really isn't church because there really isn't true fellowship. What it is a place, and if it's a good ministry, it is pure milk of the Word of God for the kingdom seeker, for the lost person, for those that God's healing from backsliding. It's not meat and potatoes. Church, depending on where its growth is, its pastorship, is meat and potatoes. That's why a lot of people have a hard time receiving healing, because they're still operating on a baby Christian faith that they're going to go to the minister and the minister can heal me. Well, the minister can't heal anything. God heals people. Now, God does use gifts to minister to the lost, minister to the baby Christian, minister to precious believers whose faith only goes so far, and they need someone else to fill the gap between the individual's faith and the Zoe life of God that heals and restores. However, we've got to stop comparing ourselves among ourselves. We must examine our own work. Then we'll have reason for boasting or rejoicing in regard to our work within ourselves alone, not in regard to another. If somebody's bearing more fruit, or we're bearing more fruit, then we can move into pride or discontentment, either way. And then we're in danger of being provoked into doing something that God did not tell us to do. And therein lies the rub. We do things because brother so-and-so did it. We do things because sister so-and-so did it. And now we're in a pickle because now God never told us to do it. And lo and behold, he's now financing it. He's under no moral obligation to finance something that he didn't tell you to do. Now, if he did tell you to do something, he is under a moral obligation to finance it. You know, I've heard that said, if it's his will, it's his bill. So, and that's a great attitude to not shoulder the burden of ministry or whatever God's called us to do. Whether we're a layman believer and God's unctioned us to start our own business, it's his will, it's his bill. He will bring in the starter capital to birth that business or ministry, pending on our calling. But we got to stop comparing ourselves with other people. And to be puffed up and to think of ourselves as something when we have nothing to show for it, that's a special kind of delusional pride that we need to guard ourselves against. There's a work to be done, and we need to ask the Lord, what is my mission? What is my task to take care of before you? That is our primary goal. You know, there's often, you talk to people and they go, I'm called to be an evangelist, or I'm called to be a pastor. And then they're off doing some business endeavor. And I'm going, well, why are you doing this? Well, I got to, you know, there's things I got to do too. But they're neglecting their calling. You know, there's a lot of ideas I have. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, and everybody's got a business, and it's a very successful family. However, if God didn't tell me to do this, I'm neglecting my calling. I'm not going to be asked about the secondary desire to have a business, maybe create some passive income, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is wrong if it's usurping the priority of what God's called us to do. Our gifts and our callings are our priority, not trying to save face with our friends and to look good with them. Take this before the Lord and ask the Lord what you should be doing. And if he didn't tell you to do something, put that on the shelf. Don't sow to it. Don't invest your time in it. Invest your time in what he's telling you to do, whatever that is. And it will always be in line with the Word of God. There should never be any discrepancies or conflict with the Word. And then you'll bear good fruit. And so on Judgment Day, when you stand before him, he'll say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Peace and love as you work out your own salvation.